So tell us how you got into the music biz then, Simon. What were you? Were you in a band?
I was in a band. Yeah, I was a choir boy.
Were you really?
Yeah.
So you had musical upbringing?
Yes, yeah, because my father could play piano and stuff,
right.
And I was in the local choir joined when I was about 9 years old.
Wow.
And sort of quite enjoyed singing and stuff.
Yeah.
And got into when I was really young. My mother's younger sister lived with us, my aunt, and there was a sufficient age gap. She was only like about 8 years older, 9 years older than me.
Yeah.
So when she was bringing home, you know, Beatles, Stones, Hendrix, and all that sort, and me as a little kid, and it was just like, my God, you know, what is this? And especially my mother going, "Oh, this is awful, terrible, terrible."
Right.
Know? So of course that was because your mother didn't like it and everything. And
so that's when you turned to the dark side.
Yeah, I turned to the dark side. Then I got into hi-fi, and that's my main, you know, sort of sado me, you know, still loves his hi-fi and everything.
Right.
But I got into that from a really early age, having blagged a valve Dansett thing from an old church hall, from a church hall. I saw it on top of a cupboard and managed to blag it and got it fired up and everything. So I had it in my bedroom. It was, you know, the best thing ever type of thing. And then just always into music, and then got to a point where I formed a few bands and stuff, and then
was this playing guitar? Or
no, singing.
Just singing.
Yeah. And then worked, and I worked in a record shop in Birmingham, really, Inferno Records, which was like a really hip. You know, it was a chart return shop as well, so that was amazing because we, you know, used that back in the day when they used to bribe you, shall we say, with Birminghamian tickets and
fantastic.
This, that, and the other. And of course, we never took any. You know, never took any. But that was great because I was a heavy metal fan.
Yeah.
But working in the shop, you know, people would come, the reps would come in, and you get free tickets to see like Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran, stuff you'd never normally go and buy and see. But because they were free, you could finish work and go straight to the Odeon. And I'd go and see these bands and that was a complete eye opener because some of them were amazing. I remember seeing Ultravox; they were absolutely amazing. This whole set was sort of like grey, white, and black, and it was just like, you know, it was just Vienna was happening. So that opened my eyes a bit to all that, and then it was a point of I just don't want to work anymore. I can't bear the 9 to 5, even though it's a record shop. It became really monotonous.
Right.
And so I left home, packed my job in, all at the same time, because I was still living with my mother, and went and lived in these mad bedsits and formed this band, you know. And I put an advert in. I put an advert in Kerrang because Kerrang was out by then, just not long started. Yeah. And had a few replies from people from Birmingham, and we just sort of got this heavy metal band together and went from there, really.
So who were your heroes? Were you sort of Judas Priest and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was more glam rock stuff when I was a kid. Alice Cooper, you know, Roxy Music, still one of my favourite bands of all time. Queen, amazing. But then, when I got into the proper metal, it was Priest, DC, Scorpions, and all the new wave of British heavy metal stuff, Accept, all that sort of stuff, you know. Obviously Sabbath, Zeppelin, Purple, you know. I like Uriah Heep as well, some of that stuff, because I had a mate who was more into that type of stuff. Yeah. So I got to hear a hell of a lot of stuff. I was DJing as well all the way through that at some point, so, you know, we'd play weddings and so you'd have all the chart stuff as well, so I had a big, you know, and it didn't bother me that, you know, I'd never say, oh yeah, I'm just into heavy metal or anything like that, even though I was. Because I remember even when punk started, it was like, this is amazing, you know, because I was old enough to, you know, embrace it, and like we'd go to the punk discos and everything, and it's like, it's fantastic, you know. Because
I remember when I was about 17, you know, sort of wedding style DJs. That was always the classic. You go, got any heavy metal?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the times that people would come up, you know, a wedding do and that, and you'd be paying a shed load of money. I mean, we were earning shed loads when I was 15, 16, because we built up a really good sound system because of
hi-fi expertise.
And like better than anybody at the time, and it was just, you know, proper bins and tweeters and horns and stuff like. No, what's that like? But you crank it up, and so you got the gigs from that, having a decent sound, proper mics, But yeah, the times that people have come up and say, "I've got any status quo, I've got any heavy metal," it's like, well, I have, mate. I've probably got more than you, but we ain't gonna play it. But yeah, so anyway, I did that, and then with the band, it got to the point where we needed a PA and stuff. So, to cut a long story short, I got a PA system and blagged the PA system off a mate of mine who was a DJ who bought an H&H full PA stack at the time, 16 channel desks, bins, mids, horns, power amps, and he just didn't know how to use it. He had a Bose system, and he thought, I've got to do this for bigger venues. No idea how to use it. So I said, well, can we have it? And but we couldn't afford to pay you. We were all literally gone on the dole and everything, practicing, rehearsing 9 to 5 sort of thing. We had this rehearsal room in the cellar where the bedsits were, where we were living. And this guy said, okay, you take on the HP, because he bought it on HP or on the knock or whatever. He said, you take on the payments. And it was a question then of, right, well, we can't afford to do that unless we hire it out. Because there was one guy who lived in Stourbridge, he was a sound engineer for Shakin' Stevens. But he was the big, God, he's, in the music bit, you know what I mean? And he had a PA system. And so we thought, well, if we can undercut him and everything like that.
Right.
And basically, because we knew other bands, because we were gigging around, a lot of gigs in that area, as you probably know. And a lot of venues then just didn't have in-house PAs, pubs and that. You had to bring your own rig. So we were saying, yeah, we'll hire ours out for 30 quid a night at the time, and it's like, bloody hell. Yeah, so we did it. And of course, who's going to do the sound? So I volunteered myself up, because I've been doing it in the rehearsal room and stuff and learning. No one sort of showed me, apart from a couple of chats with this Shakin' Stevens guy. And so basically I just learnt like that, and then we were renting it out, and I quite enjoyed it, and when you got a decent mix live, it was... And so then the guy who I bought the PA off realised it was going well, so he came to me and said, look, shall we form a partnership and we'll make it a business? So I said, yeah, because this guy was a great salesman and everything. So I thought, yeah, brilliant. So we did that, and then basically, we just kept buying, upgrading, improving the rig and everything like that, to a point where we were doing like Burberry's in Birmingham, which had bands like Primal Scream, Sugar Cubes, Bjork and all that, the Wonder Stuff, Pop Will Eat Itself. So all that scene was starting to happen, and we were like building up a decent PA and everything like that. And then we were storing it in a community centre and didn't really have anywhere. And then one day we walked out of this community centre, and opposite there was this thing for rent, 50 quid a week, this warehouse, and it was an old meat storage warehouse. So basically it was like 3 massive fridges, the size of this room. And I was just thinking, rehearsal rooms, because that's what we thought. We could have storage, open some rehearsal rooms, studio, first thing I was thinking. Because I dabbled with 4-tracks and stuff. I didn't own a 4-track, but we blagged a 4-track a few times to demo my own band and everything like that, and sort of using the multi-core and the PA, the desk. And we got it. We went and saw the guy and who owned it, and said, yeah, no problem. It took about a month to clean it. We had to have industrial. We knew a guy who worked at the swimming baths, and the chloride. It's like we were in there with masks on and everything, all this horrible meat and blood and God knows what. But eventually, we got the first room done, and it was really good. And I knew the guitarist from the Wonder Stuff. They were rehearsing in Brum, which annoyed them a lot because it was 12-mile trip there to Rich Bitch. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Yeah, they'd have to go over there, so it was a right pain. And I said, oh, well, we're opening a rehearsal room, we'll do you a better rate, and it means you don't have to travel. So they were completely over the moon. Block booked it on a certain days, that was their day, and they were like the first band in there. And this was just before they were signed. It was when they were doing their first indie thing with the bass player who'd won the money on the bass thing, he'd won the money on the pools to finance their EP. So it was all perfect timing. So we did that. It was a place for our bands to rehearse, and then word just got out, and it just went crazy. And we managed to do the other room. We did a second room, did that out, then the third room, then a fourth, which we did upstairs, and it was just heaving every day, just like couldn't get enough band. You know, it was just going crazy. I wanted to get it, and I kept saying, "We've got to get a studio. We've got to get a studio." In the meantime, I started to do one or two decent bands live. You know, because a lot of the time when you're putting in house PAs, the guys would have their own sound engineer. But I was doing like support acts and stuff. The Wonder Stuff were going out. Doing some decent gigs, and they went out with Big Country with the then sound guy that they had, he was a friend of Big Mick and all that, like, you know, because all that was, you know, the Birmingham scene. But this guy just couldn't cut it, and he had a bit of a nervous breakdown on tour or whatever. He just couldn't cope with the rock and roll lifestyle.
Right.
And they came to me and they said, "Well, do you fancy giving it a go? We got some club dates. Come and do the sound if it's any good, you know." And they had a tour lined up with Zodiac Mindwarp, who at the time was playing the Odeons, and it was, you know, the prime mover time. So, and I said, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." And I went and did a decent job, and they liked it. So, and then I got the gig. So I was, you know, able to do that. Earning some decent money as well. You know, sound engineer. We had an upstairs room that I said would be an ideal control room. We could run down the multi down to the main rehearsal room, which was decent sounding, you know, for a live room, and we just bought the gear. You know, it's like a case, right? We'll get the first thing. Well, Fostix B16. Yeah, we bought with the what was the bloody SEC? The SEC 18 into 82. Yeah, it was all, you know, what was around at the time that was affordable, and got going from there. The great thing was we had a mate. Who worked at Clark Technic, which Kidderminster was like 6 miles away, and he was in a band that rehearsed at our place, and he was one of the main guys there. So he would let us like blag stuff. I think I told you last time, Mike, when the gates and compressors first came out, and they had them for quite a while, and lads, have a rack of 4 gates, 4 compressors, and you can just use them. You know, it was just like, we never gave him back, never paid for him, you know. Brilliant. But it was just, and the reverb, the beautiful reverb, DN 780 was it? Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah, 780. Yeah. One of them. Nice. And they were worth it, you know. They were selling for and one of them. So we had that in the studio. I mean, we had drama and stuff in the PA and that, but I thought, well, there's no way I'm taking this Clark Technic out. That's going in the studio. So what we had was decent outboard, like Rev 7s and things, and you know, we used to know a guy in Musical Exchange, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, but he was a bit of a rogue, and let's say that some dodgy deals were done, you know, but it needs must sort of thing. Yeah.
And did you design the studio yourself then?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was no rocket science about it. I just took on board what I knew from the hi-fi stuff and about damping at the back and listening for reflections and blah blah sort of thing, and it was just one of those lucky things. It sounded pretty good. It was pretty dead, but not American studio dead, you know.
What were your monitors? What did you...
Clark Technic. Yeah. Clark Technic active ones. Right. Yeah. Do you remember those? Good speakers.
Monroe designed them, I think.
Yeah. And the control room was probably about the size of that one over there, a little bit smaller. So I always wanted the need for some big, you know, tracking speakers, but they were big enough to do okay, you know. Yeah. Had them and got some NS10s, just, you know, realised that they were rubbish really, you know, they were just there when you know, to make SSL desks look good back in the day, wasn't it? And everybody decided, oh, those must be the speakers, but I monitored on them and fine. And
so how did you get in there? What was going on?
Well, we got in the first big thing I did. There was a band called the Sankings, who the singer was Jazzman, who did Spaceman, his band. They were supporting the Wonder Stuff on one of the tours after we'd done the Zodiac tour, and I was like at them and saying, I've got a studio, blah 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 blah. You know, and they were from Wolverhampton anyway. Yeah. So they came in and we did an EP, and that got released, and it came out all right. I played it not so bad. Circles. Right. Do you know it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I've got it.
I can't remember which one it is.
12-inch on vinyl, and then. We were doing like a lot of the bands who were rehearsing. Oh, can we do a demo? Can we do a demo? So it was great for me to like sort of cut my teeth from the studio thing, and I bought in, you know, you learn stuff from live, that, you know, because so many studio engineers, they go out and try and do live and haven't got a clue, you know, feedback, what's that?
Yeah.
You know, it's like...
That's happened to me,
Yeah. So, I was lucky in that way that I've been doing both. And then Ned's Atomic Dustbin, that they formed, they suddenly kicked off, and their first single, so we did that there, the first EP. And did that in there, and that really gave the studio a boost.
What was the studio called?
It was called Reckless. I mean, it was just the name of the company, really.
Yeah.
And but what happened was it was going and going, but I was just getting so much live stuff, and I couldn't turn down the tours and Europe, America, Japan, Australia, and all that. But I was going away, and unfortunately, I was the only one with ears in the place. We had a few lads that we got going out with the PA. Who'd take that out, and we could trust them, and they were doing all right. You know, they still work now. Stan, the one guy, he does really well, and another guy called Simon Welsh. He lives in America now, but you might have heard of his name. He did the sound for Ned's, and then loads of other Jesus Jones, all that type of stuff. So it got to the point where if I was away, nothing really was happening, you know. And then we sort of had a bit of a falling out, and I just said, "Oh, balls to it, I'm going to sell up my share." So I did, you know, because I was starting to I'd met Rudy, and that's how the second phase of my proper producing career started, because he was managing a band called The One Thing.
So who's Rudy? What's Rudy's other name?
Reed.
Rudy Reed.
Yeah. I met him purely by accident.
And he's managing this band you're working with at the moment?
Yeah.
And what are they called?
Blacklight Pioneer.
Blacklight Pioneer?
Yeah. They've been in a few metal bands and stuff in the past, like Raging Speedhorn and various, you know, there's a couple of them are quite seasoned. But I met Rudy by this guy who I knew who was a Wonder Stuff fan. He said, "Oh, I'm in a band, blah blah blah. We need a PA." So he knew I had a PA. I said, "Yeah, well, give us a call and we'll rent you a PA." And at that time, as I said, I wasn't going out with a PA anymore. You know, these lads were. But for some reason, it was in Kettering. I thought, I'll have a ride out. I wasn't doing anything. I'll have a ride out with the lads and go and see this band. And I met Rudy because he was sort of like I said, sort of managing them at the time, you know. And met him, and we just had a meeting of minds, shall we say, and then it sort of went from there. And that's obviously because he knew Winkleman and all that. And I said, you know, I'm into heavy metal, and all I've done is indie stuff. Yeah. I'd produced indie stuff. I'd produced no metal stuff apart from my own band, and that had fizzled by the wayside because some of the other guys they wanted jobs, and they didn't like the fact that we got the studio and the PA and it was doing all right, and just a sort of jealousy vibe and stuff. And I said, yeah, I'd love to get into some, you know, metal production and that, and. Because he knew Wink and all that sort of stuff. I knew the Diamond Egg guys because Tatler was from Stourbridge. Well, Diamond Egg were from Stourbridge as well. So I'd always known Tatler from when we were like 15, 16. But, you know, sort of paths had gone away. And so I managed to blag via sort of Rudy, Winkleman and knowing Diamond Head. I started doing live sound for Diamond Head. They reformed because Tatler had his band called Radio Moscow, and I was doing the sound for them. Then Diamond Head reformed with Sean Harris, the singer, who really sort of was the main guy, and he needed to be convincing that. And I did a desk tape of all things at some venue, and it was one of those lucky things. It sounded amazing because a lot of times desk tapes, it was all vocals and drums usually, you know. And he just said, "Oh, this is great. It's captured the vibe. Blah 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 blah." We're going into Park Gate with Mark Durnley, right? And and there's little old me thinking, "Fucking hell, you know, Mark Durnley, AC/DC, and all that sort of stuff." And so they said, "We want Efemey to come with us as our sort of like vibing, like co-production type of thing."
What did Mark Durnley think of that?
Well, I'll come to that. It's quite. I'll tell you whether you put it in or not. But it's the God's honest truth. There's a big knee VR60 at Park Gate, so we get in there, everything like that, and he was fine. You know, this is Simon, blah blah blah. Don't think he was. You know, he's probably just said, "I was just like a hanger-on or a type thing." It had been explained, but Ala Wink, you know what he's like. He doesn't always tell the full details when required. You know, so we get in there, and anyway. Sean Harrison Tatler said to Durnley, "Yeah, well, this is Simon. You know, he's come to oversee certain things. You know, he's a vibe of blah blah blah." And
were they paying you to come and do this?
Yeah, I was getting paid. Which was fine. You know, not a mega amount, but I'd have done it for nothing. Just because of Durnley, I'm going to learn a shed load of stuff. And so we start the session, and you're talking a fantastic drummer, Yamaha 9000 kit, tuned to perfection, beautiful drum kit. He got Carl, the drummer, and he was a brilliant drummer. And Parkgate, I don't know if did you ever? Yeah, good sounding room, you know, lovely, that big old control room and everything. And Durnley, he starts opening the channels and like kick drum, you know, yeah, that's fine. And I'm thinking, and it was all flat, you know. And the kick drum was going dong, 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 you know, sort of like, he got an AKG D112 in it, which I thought, in my little studio, I got an RE20, for God's sake, you know. I got a proper kick drum, might be, again, live, you know, we wouldn't even dream of using the AKGs. So we used 421s live for the kicks or whatever, or if we took the RE20. So he's doing this, and I'm thinking, oh, he's going to do something in a bit, you know, it's going to sort the sound out in a bit and everything. But anyway, went through the lot, drums, okay, you know, let's put a bit to tape, check it out and everything. And I just kept thinking, it sounds shit, it just sounds crap, you know, apart from the room mics and stuff, but the close mics. And I was thinking, you know, I've got enough experience by this to do it. And so it gets everything else up and running. And guitars, you know, running and flat sounded brilliant anyway because Tatler got a great sound. And start tracking. So I thought, whatever, you know, it's all going to happen after. So he's sitting this side. He's running the machine, the tape machine. I'm sitting the other side where it's coming back, monitoring, coming back via the other channels. And I can remember thinking, I'm going to have to do, I want to EQ that kick drum, I want to get it to sound like heavy metal. So I was sitting there and he wasn't watching, I was punching in the EQ on the monitor pad and start dialing out the box, you know, and adding a little bit of smack and doing it really gradually. And he wasn't noticing, but I was noticing, you know, and I was just, and I thought, fucking hell. And anyway, at some point, this is like day one still, and he looked over and he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He saw me fiddling. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just tweaking sound a bit, trying to get a bit more rock on that." And as though, like, you know, looks could kill sort of thing. He said, "Well, don't do that, you know." I said, "Well, I just wanted to get it sound a bit for the vibe," because by now we started to do, you know, a bit of guitar in the control room, and because they did the guitars before the bass, and. He didn't like it, and anyway Tatler stuck up, you know, they stuck up for me, said, "Oh yeah, you know, this sounds a lot better like that," and he was fuming, you could see it, you know. And the day carried on, and then the next day he was gone. No reason what had happened, whether or not the band had a word with Wink, or he just took the hump because some whippersnapper was there, you know, there he was with his experience. But the God's honest truth was, I was gutted because I thought I was going to learn a shed load of stuff. Yeah. I thought, Christ above, you know, obviously you realise that Lang and whatever had all the say with the DC stuff and this, that and the other. But I thought I was going to learn shed load. Whether or not he was just being lazy and didn't care, because he was just on a bit of a, you know, it was only going to be a week session or whatever, but I thought, well, it's a matter of pride, isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, he cleared off, so I was the boy.
So you put your EQ on the mic?
I was there and went and EQ'd everything up and made the drums sound way better, and then I just had the assistant guy, he became, you know, the T-boy guy became the assistant, and that was it. We did the rest of the session. And then that EP came out and did alright.
Yeah.
And then my big break with the Paradise Lost thing was, we went on tour with this band, The One Thing, who Rudy was managing. They supported a band called Loud, who were managed by Andy Farrow, who he manages Opeth and stuff like that now, Paradise, you know, and he just started managing Paradise Lost, who'd done 2 like gothic type albums, but they wanted to go more commercial. But the guitarist, even though he was in a metal band, wasn't a metalhead. And the criteria for a producer, they didn't want to use people like Colin Richardson and stuff like that, because they didn't want that same vibe that, you know, that his sound type of thing. And I got talking with Andy Farrow on these gigs and stuff, and he knew that I'd done the Diamond Head stuff, and he knew I'd done all this indie stuff. He went back and told Greg, the guitarist, and Greg just loved the idea of having a more of an indie producer. Yeah. But the hilarity is I was an absolute out-and-out metalhead. Yeah. You know, so it was like, right, okay. So my kudos came that he thought he was going to bring a bit of indie style into it. But I sort of did, you know, because of the pop sense, you know, and got them singing and stuff, and then it just sort of went from there, really. Did that first album, that did okay, got the reviews, the second one, and then Draconian Times, and loads of other stuff in between, you know. And then me and Rudy, you know, we were doing stuff for East West, working for Dante Benuto and all manner of stuff, really. And then I got signed by Zomba as a producer, which was a bit of an error of judgment, really. You know, because did a fair bit of work and then it dried up, and subsequently I found out that they were pitching at stupid money, like for bands that couldn't really afford it. Whereas when you were on your own, you could, every band's a different deal, isn't it? You know, you look at the budget, you look at what do you want to do it, blah 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 sort of thing. And so like because I spoke to some bands and they said, yeah, we tried to get you as a producer, but they were quoting ridiculous money and that. So
how does that work now? If you've got a project, presumably it's the band that want to use you generally. Yeah,
I mean I do all my own deals now.
Do you?
So Rudy came back into it because he stopped managing for a while, me or whatever, you know, and then he had his thing with Orson and stuff, which I did some work with them and that, and went out and did them live when they supported Duran Duran and whatever. But yeah, I mean basically I'll do the deal myself, or you know.
And how's that work? I mean, do you get a sort of contract written in legalese that you
I've got a basic contract that I can use, you know.
Yeah.
It just depends, you know, if it's going to be signed or it's going to go somewhere, you have the contract, you know. If it's starting off just money and, you know, do it like that sort of thing.
Right? Yeah, and I mean, do records earn royalties these days?
I still get royalties from PL stuff and bits and bobs, but not so much. I mean, you know yourself now, sales, you know, it's all about the live thing again.
Yeah. So presumably these days you're negotiating on the basis of just getting a good fee in the first place, really. Then.
Basically, yeah. And then it's still the royalty agreement, because stuff still does go, as you know, but not so much anymore. You know. You know, you could do a decent metal album like 15 years ago, and you probably never heard of it, but you get a decent royalty return just because it sold shed loads in Germany or whatever, you know. But it ain't the same now, you know. So much more geared up to the live thing. I mean, I didn't do live sound for about 10 years. Well, once the Paradise Lost kicked in, I stopped doing live sound. I think I did about 2 shows, just like showcase things. One at Foundations Forum in LA because I wanted to blag a free ticket to go, you know, because that was a great weekend on the booze. And I'd sort of lost contact to it. I used to go to gigs and stuff, but when I came back to it, I came back to it by my mate Shane from Napalm Death. Russ was doing the sound, and then he couldn't do it and stuff, and he said, "Oh, come on, Efemey, come out and do it again for a laugh, you know, get back in the live thing, come and have a crack." And I'd sort of split up with my first missus, and so I thought, yeah, this will be a time I can go out and have some fun again live, and did so. And enjoyed it again, you know. And of course, by this time, all the new gear was in, you know, the line arrays and.
So how long ago was this?
10 years.
Right.
I stopped doing live in about 92. Yeah. To about 2002. Right. It was about that.
Yeah.
So the digiboards were just coming in and all that sort of stuff. So that freaked me. It was like, God. But you know, there's one thing, digiboards in the studio. I'd use O2Rs and things like that, but to go out live and. It's like, Christ. And I used to have this dream years ago, and this is no bullshit, I used to have this dream of like walking up, doing a walk up at a festival to a console, and there was nothing on it, just faders. Yeah. And it was always the same board, and for some reason in my dream it was made by Alan and Heath. God knows why. God knows why. But it was just weird. Yeah. And I can still picture it. I've had the recur.
Wasn't Trident Diane?
No. But there it was, guys. Can you imagine this first festival I did? We did this festival, and I walked up, and I can't remember what it was. I think it was one of the early Yamahas, and it was like, the dream's here. There's just faders. You know what I mean? But obviously, you know, you got into it. But no, yeah, I got back into doing that live. Enjoyed it. Went and did America again, which I enjoyed. South America. Or
and who were you doing?
Napalm.
Right,
you know, just like my mates.
Yeah.
You know, going out with your mate, getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Like Shane, one of my best mates, and Mitch, and
brilliant.
It was a good crack. But then it got boring again a bit. Still do studio stuff, and then I got asked to do a mate of mine, Iced Earth. And they were going to support Heaven and Hell, and I just couldn't resist that. That was it. That was the ticket. You know, go and see Heaven and Hell every night, like Sabbath and like with Dio and stuff. So I went out and did them, and then ended up working with them for a couple of years. And again, you know, good crack. And they didn't tour too much because some of them worked. So. But now they've got a new singer. They're actually on tour at the minute, but they're doing like months and months, and I couldn't commit to doing that. You know, it's too much really.
So have you not been in the studio much the last 5 years then, or so?
Not so much. No. I mean, more. Well, no, I have really, but it's been more my own stuff, my missus' band stuff.
All right.
That type of thing. You know, I mean, we were working with what's the name, Coco, for forever and a day, and there was a lot of work went into that, but. Basically, they spalled it up because they, you know, not promoted it right or whatever.
Who's Coco then?
She's from Kettering. I mean, she's half American.
Oh right.
But she's a female singer, and it's good stuff. It was pop stuff. It wasn't rock, you know, pop rock sort of thing. And really tried to have a go at managing her. But there's her and her mother, and the mother is like in charge and very, very difficult.
Right.
And basically ballsed everything up, you know. And it was really, really good stuff. Live, amazing. I got I sorted them out, backing tracks and the band, and it just sounded great. But you know, and then doing my own stuff as well. Me and Shane. We got this mad band called Absolute Power. That looks like we're playing Download this year. So I'll be back treading the boards again.
You're singing again.
Yeah. We did this album. It's like a tribute to classic heavy metal,
right? And
it just started as a bit of it started here actually, because we were doing a Napalm album here, and Shane had got his 4-track, and I got these riffs and songs from years ago, and we said, why don't let's just like do stuff that at the end of the night when we're drunk, rather than keep playing Priest and Dio and stuff, let's do some of our own stuff, so it's new, you know, fresh, different songs. So we did. And a bit of a piss take a la Darkness, and it was actually before when we were doing the Napalm. Darkness were over there doing their first album. Can you believe that? It's no bullshit. We were here overdubbing and mixing, and they were over there doing the first album. But so it just took forever to do. But eventually we did most of the tracking over there, and then money ran out because we were promised a label, and then they welshed. So we had no money and we couldn't do it. We managed to blag in Andy Sneap's place, and then eventually when Russ got his studio in Kettering Parlour, we finished it off, you know.
Oh, good.
And it came out last year.
And who's released that?
It's on Fito. It was on Shane's label. It's only on download at the minute, but it's got some great reviews. You got Metal. Metal is the Australian thing. Number 12 album of 2011, and you know. It's like bloody great.
What's the album called?
Just called Absolute Power.
Right. A lot of modern metal is quite unlistenable to many people, isn't it? Because it is so chromatic and sort of weird and just a bit hard going to listen to, isn't it?
I mean, if you listen to our record, you'll totally know where we're coming from.
Right.
But it sounds massive. We've sort of kept a little old school sort of sound, you know, the snare type of thing, you know. But at the same time, you know, you wanted the full on power. But we got some guest musos on it. We had Tatler played on it, and Ripper Owen, you know, who's in Priest and Yingwi and stuff. He's amazing. He did some screams and that, because I can sing all right, but I couldn't scream like he could. So I thought we'd get him on there, you know, and a few other various other people played on it. But there was a core of a band, you know. But
because presumably things have changed quite a bit since you first started recording, the way that, especially the way metal records are made, because a lot of them do sound quite similar these days.
Yeah, and a lot of it's due to that, unfortunately, due to the old Pro Tools, because you know, it's so clinical, And people want that. They want the tightness. They want the accuracy, which is fair enough. And I'm torn sometimes because I want that myself. And you know when you've had it and you can do it, you go, Christ, that's amazing how tight you can get that. Syncopated, whatever, whatever. And then you sometimes think, yeah, but, let's listen to Let There Be Rock. We can hear the snare rattling and underwire and think nothing muted and all that sort of stuff. And
so it's a difficult call to make, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Because also, presumably, it's time saving in some respects.
Very much so, yeah.
Just chop things and
I mean, I'll never forget the first, when it happened. Obviously, I was there from tape. I was there at the transition with tape and using some of that. And then when we started using Square Centre a lot in Nottingham, it became Logic as we were using there, whatever, Pro Tools. So.
And are you a whiz with all that stuff? Or
I'm not brilliant, no, because Russ came into my life at the time when we were.
And this is Russ Russell.
Russ Russell at Winkleman's, and we were doing at the Manor.
Great Linford Manor.
Yeah, and I was doing like bands like the Wish Plants and various other stuff, and he wanted to get into it, and he was a whiz anyway because he was a graphics artist, so he knew his way around computers.
Right, I see. So you left that to him a bit.
And he wanted to do that side of things, and I said, yeah, this is a great combination because he can do that and I can do the producing and more, mixing and EQ, that sort of thing. So we built up a formidable partnership like that and did some good stuff. I mean, I can work it, don't get me wrong, but I find that you can't produce properly if your head's in that, because there's so much to, it's not even like with a tape machine. You could sit there and stop and start a tape machine.
So have you got somebody here that you're working with at the moment?
Yeah, I always have a lad, make sure I don't, I'll tell him what I want, and I've shown him. He's a bit green, this guy. There's a bit of a baptism of fire, really. But he's been all right.
Is it somebody you found, or is
no, Andy? Somebody... It's one of Andy's kids. They do these gap courses, and so he gets them for nothing, I suppose. Yeah, and they get the experience.
In at the deep end.
I said how much. I've met him a few times before because the other kid we've been using, another Sam, he was well on the case, and he learned quite a lot of stuff. And this guy, he's a little baptism of fire. He said, I'm shitting myself. I said, don't worry, just relax. It's all right. We'll make it work. Just calm down, and But
so how much do you chop things up and put them in time?
With this band, this is why I'm enjoying these sort of more rock pop bands. You can get it a bit more old school because the drummer's really good. Okay, he played to click and that. Yeah. And this assistant guy is a drummer, and he's going slightly off with the click. He's going slightly out. I said, that's good. He's speeding up slightly. It's tension at the end of the song. That type of thing. Don't worry about it. If it, when you take that click away, it'll sound as tight as a duck's arse anyway. Once everything's with it. I see you have no idea of some of the stuff I've recorded in the past that would be all over the place, but when it's all together, you don't notice it so much. Yeah.
And what about with like triggering samples and things? Do you?
I'll do it. Yeah, if needs be. Again, so much depends on the source. Yeah. I mean, we've used what's the drum? £1,000 snare drum that sounds amazing. It might be a Black Beauty.
I got one.
Yeah. And if you come over and have a listen, I mean, just as it is dry, it sounds great. Yeah. And I was just thinking, I don't think we're going to need to do anything with that, So sometimes what I'll do as well is rather than just like go through, and that's like you're saying why a lot of heavy metal records sound the same because they all use the same samples. What I'd rather do is take single shots of the hits without spillage and stuff, and then
trigger your own samples.
So if you want that bit of clarity and you don't want splishy, phasing and cymbals everywhere or whatever, so I'll do that.
And how do you work? What about ambient miking?
Yeah, loads of it.
Do you have samples that have got ambience mixed in with them?
No. I'd use all my own ambient stuff.
Right.
Like in there, it's great if you have a high overhead single and squash that with a distressor. It sounds absolutely amazing. It's almost like the glue that gels it all in that room. And even with kick in it makes a difference to the kick drum as well. Which
so you just get loads of cymbals and stuff like that.
No, it's really good. I'll show you.
All right.
Before you can have a quick listen. But that's the nature of that room.
Yeah.
But for me, George, it's every band's different, and you try and get some individuality. I try not to, we're going to use that kick and that same old kick, and we'll put that on, it'll be fine. I don't want to do that. It's difficult because, like you said, you have been spoilt and you know what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that a lot of those sort of fairly thrash death metal sort of records are quite boring to make because all you're doing is going through just make sure everything's in time and all the guitars are spot on with each other.
Very much so.
And it's just doing overdubs.
Yeah,
and it must drive you bonkers.
A lot of the bands, it's all rehearsed, it's all pre-produced. A lot of the time it's just the vocals need coaching, really. But music-wise, it's pretty boring. Whereas bands like this, I've co-arranged. Well, I've arranged the songs really. Cause
so is that in terms of the structure of the songs?
A to B sort of thing. That's for me. That's a proper producer's job.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because rock can be quite self-indulgent in that respect. You wouldn't dream of editing down some Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin.
No,
but you go for a bit more of a pop.
Yeah, well, this band because they're looking for that pop. They're looking to be on Radio 2. There's no bones about it. Yeah. So I said, well, if you want to be on Radio 2, you've got to have 3 minutes. You've got to have some 3-minute songs. Yeah. And it's the same old thing with musos. You know what they're like. They sent me the demos of the songs in 16 bars rather than 4 of the same guitar riff, and it's like, Jesus Christ, just listen to some of the best records, and the singing never stops, if you know what I mean, or there's something going on, But a lot of bands just don't see that. No. Whereas a producer, which I think is a proper function, is the guy with the punter's ears, as I call it. Yeah. Well, I'm listening to a track, and I do my homework, I listen to all the pop stuff and everything as well as I love Nick Floyd and stuff. As you said, you wouldn't dream of editing down, Shine On You Crazy Diamond or something like that, would you? But it's just the nature of what is it. If an album came up where I'd be doing something like that, I wouldn't try and do that. But
I suppose that's part of your skill, is to judge when it's appropriate to do that.
And also, is that what the band are looking for? If they were turning around and saying we want to be out and out heavy metal type thing, play tracks like Freebird or something, 10 minutes long, then whatever. But they want commercial success. So.
Well, presumably people come to you because they know records you've done. Yeah. And that includes things that are a bit more pop as well, doesn't it? I mean, like the Wild Hearts songs, exactly. Quite fun. They were kind of like more darkness-like, weren't they?
Yeah. I mean, that was a good eye-opener because that was probably the first, apart from the indie stuff, that was probably the first pop rock metal, shall we say, that I'd done. And Ginger, you wanted those pop arrangements, even though there was some madness as well. Yeah. But there was always, the quality choruses were coming out and whatever. So that was good. Good educational thing in that way as well. Yeah. But
you still enjoy doing some of the more extreme metal stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, if it's good, if there's a tune there, right, or something there.
Deceased, is that?
Yeah,
that was a bit more heavier, isn't it?
Yeah, that was good stuff. And he was crazy guy, the drummer singer. So there's stuff like that. I've tried, even with.
They brought out. There's 2 albums at the same time, or how did that work?
I don't know how it worked. To be fair, they did it.
Did you do all that?
I did. I did a whole bunch of them, and then it sort of all came out weird. But it's like same with even Cancer, who were absolute death metal. But when they signed with, we managed to blag them a deal with East West, me and Rudy. And if you listen to that Black Faith album, I actually had him singing melodies on it. You can actually pick up, and that was my vibe. Was come on, if you've got this extreme, and that's right with Draconian Times, Paradise Lost, who was singing tunes. I said, you're always going to sell. The classic reference is the Black Album, Metallica. They had some decent stuff beforehand, but as soon as they actually wrote some, shall we say, more commercial tunes or whatever, it just went, okay, it's going to sell more.
But people presume a lot of these bands, they don't want to sell out, do they?
No. Well, that's how they see it as selling out, but I don't think it is.
So do you generally work here then, all your projects you've done in the last few years?
Here, I've worked at Foal quite a bit of late, and then a lot of people, home studios. Right. A lot of bands.
So you go to the band studio?
Yeah.
Right.
Because you can do so much.
What do you do about mixing? Do you mix here on the desk and bring it all up and use the automation and all the outboard?
Yeah, still do that.
Do you write down recall settings and everything?
Yeah.
So people ring up and want the hi-hat a bit louder 3 weeks later.
Yeah. Well, I'm mixing stems now.
Do you?
Yeah. So
you go back into Pro Tools.
Yeah, I'll go back into Pro Tools. Bring it out of there. I'll use a combination of both. You know.
Yeah.
Use some internal stuff because some of the internal stuff, the plugins are superb. And then you still can't beat an 1176 for real.
No.
So use those and.
So how long would you normally allow for mixing an album then?
Oh, ideally.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Presumably not everyone can afford to let you do that though.
So you usually end up with about 5 days.
Yeah.
That's the thing you see. Like I said,
how do you scale it? If presumably you've got different projects coming to you where sometimes they got money to spend and do it properly, whereas other times they want to get it all done in. It's
hard. You've got to.
Where do you make the compromises?
Well, do you know I've been lucky to do that. I've never bought an album in out of budget or late, apart from The Exploited, but that wasn't my fault. That was the singer because he kept losing his voice all the time, so we had to keep on and on and on. I've just been able to do it, George. I don't know how. It's like sometimes you think, oh no, we've got to do like this. It's 4 songs in 4 days, which from scratch. Which you sort of think, God, and you know that the singer needs work. You can't just go in and do it. So and you're thinking, Jesus, but I've been able to do it. I don't know how. So like sometimes if I know I've had 2 weeks to mix an album, I'll take the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If I've got, I remember doing one record and we had to record and mix 11 songs in like 8 days. Record and mix, and we did it. So it's just like there is a compromise. There always is. At the mixing stage, sometimes you get it up, you get the balance up, you get the various effects that you want on, or the guitar, I've got to have that bit up or whatever, blah blah blah. But you can get to a point where you've just got to let it go. Because if you start getting anal, then if you've got the time to do that, then fine. But there is a point where that's it.
Well, I think sometimes getting anal doesn't necessarily produce a better result, does
exactly.
it? Because you take your eye off the ball, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, especially with the Pro Tools, you can get over anal and then you actually suck the life out of it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of records are like that now. And you hear them yourself, and you just go, God, this is just so processed, and there's no vibe to it.
Do you start late into the night then, finishing things
up? Yeah, I'll stay up till about 2-3 o'clock.
Do you?
Yeah. I don't like to work too early in the morning.
No.
Start about 11:30, 12, and go up till then. I'd rather mix in the day though. I like mixing fresh ears.
Yes.
And do that sort of thing. I get a track done in the day and then set another one up at night, and then you can sort of experiment a bit more there.
And how does it work when you're mixing metal stuff or heavy rock stuff in terms of mix bus processing and mastering? And do you run off listening copies that are limited to send to people like Rudy to listen to? And And then do you do a version without the limiting to send to mastering, or do you master stuff yourself?
I'll always go to the mastering if it's going to be released. 9 times out of 10 I'll be there at the mastering. I'm going to master this stuff just because I've learned how to do it through work, Kevin Metcalf and people like that who I did some of my albums, and you learn how to do it, and obviously it's easy.
Do you do it all inside Pro Tools?
Well, not so much. I still like to get the old proper GMLs on and proper nice compressors and things and stuff. So. But listening copies and that's how I do mixing stems now. I like that. So like you said, you can go back and go, Christ, the guitar's ain't quite loud enough. Another couple of dB or whatever, and just push it up on the stem. It's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. That is the stem mixing.
And will you have a mix bus processor as well in terms of EQ in the box, or will you use the GML? Printing a mix?
I'll use it outside here.
Yeah.
If I'm mixing in here, I'll use that.
Yeah.
If I have to, sometimes you don't have to. If hopefully you've recorded it okay. It's
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what have you got coming up, and what else have you done recently?
We're doing this band called The Attic, who are sort of a bit more of a country, sort of Rolling Stonesy type flavour.
Right. Is that going to be here again?
It's here. We're in the middle of doing it. We're halfway through doing the album, but it's been done in stages.
Yeah.
Not so much through budget, just through availability of the band and stuff.
Yeah. Is this for a label?
No. To get a deal, yeah. But it's the way so many bands are having to do their albums.
So who's mostly paying your wages then? Is it
The bands.
managers or the bands?
Bands,
yeah.
You know, they realise that they've got to self-finance these days. Gone are the days of let's go and get a deal, even a small deal, publishing deal or whatever, and there's, you know, your 10, 15 grand and go and do your record. It's not happening, you know. But guys, you've got to put that money up yourself. But if they do get signed and whatever, then they're the ones making, you know, they don't have to sign away their T-shirts and God knows what, you know, what else.
And do you ever do a deal where you get paid more when they get the deal? Or?
Yeah, or the points kick in or whatever, you know. Like I said, every deal's different.
Yeah,
you know.
of course. Yeah.
It's like old school Barrow boys, isn't it? Yeah, you give me this and I'll give you that.
So what else have you been up to recently? And what else is coming? Anything else in the?
Well, just like I said, my own stuff.
Yeah.
I'm to start practice singing.
Yeah.
Again, and we've got, you know, if this download thing comes off, we're going to do some other shows and stuff, and probably some other festivals and that. So who knows? What, you know, if that album kicks in, I'd say we've had some great reviews from it, and it's sold quite a few on download and that. So if we get some decent licensing deal and that, you know, have a couple of years of treading the boards again, which could be quite interesting, you know.
Yeah. You like doing that, going touring a bit? And
I don't know if I'm going to like it anymore. I mean, it's been that long. I used to get that nervous before I went on stage.
Yeah.
I was like, but then I didn't drink very much when you know, so I might be not so bad now if I have a couple of beers before you go on, you know. But I don't know. I mean, it doesn't bother me really, just messing around and stuff. And I've spent enough time in a live environment, you know. So we shall see.
So what other good studio tricks should we know about?
Tricks.
What secrets have you got? Tell us some. What do you do that other people don't do?
You asked me this before.
It's his favourite question.
I know.
Yeah, I always have to ask it.
Sorry.
I'm trying to. What did I say? I can't remember what I said last time.
I mean, anything about vocal recording?
Well,
vocal
recording. I'm not afraid to compress the tape, where a lot of people don't like doing that. You know, and I want to hear it as is, more or less.
Right. So you're not afraid of the 1176?
No. And yeah, I had a major mishap back in the day with PAs. We had one of the first Yamaha digital compressors, the G2020, I believe. Sorry if I can remember my model numbers. And I haven't got a clue how to use it, and because it got the input-output threshold, it got too many controls basically, and made a complete hash and feedback and God knows what and everything, and it was so embarrassing. And after that, I thought, right, I'm going to try and learn everything about compression because I want to know, you know, I know what it's supposed to do, but you know, and so I did, and so compressors are my sort of thing, shall we say.
And what's your favourite one then?
Well, that one. I always say if I had to go on a desert island, you were allowed one piece of outboard gear. I'd take an 1176 because you could do so much more with that than, you know, you can mic rooms up to get reverb and stuff like that or whatever. But then that for heavy metal or rock music, they're the godsend. Yeah. I noticed when you were recording guitars earlier, when we sneakily peeked into the studio, I think you've got was it a 41 and a 57, really close? Yeah. Is that what you generally do? Yeah. And is it a mixture of those two? Yeah, combination of the two. And do you put a room mic up at all? No, not for close miking. No, I would do for certain things, but for that sort of music, it doesn't need it. You know, presumably that close, you're going to get quite a good sizable amount of bottom end out. Yeah, you do. Yeah, proximity effect's good, and you don't get phasing with the 57 and 421. Well, sort of American, European, I suppose. You know, I don't know, whatever, but. It's a combination I didn't use that for ages because I was using the Royer. But the one they got here, I don't know because it's a ribbon mic. I don't know if it's a bit knackered or whatever. But and then I put 421 on again. And he was like, "Oh, right, okay." As you were. That's as you were. Yeah. Carry on. Yeah, dynamic for that sort of volume and that. Do you have it pointing at the middle or the edge, or just on the edge of the cone? On the edge of the on the edge of the voice cord. Edge of the middle bit. Yeah. Yeah. Shine the torch in and pointing straight in. Yeah. And now have a little. I will mess about with it, you know. And do you record those two mics on two separate tracks in Pro Tools? Yeah, and then blend them onto one. So basically, I've got one output when you mix. I'm running in this situation. I'm running the FX thing. The new the Wonder is it the accent? Is that what it's called? It's like basically the Line 6 killer.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's the dad. You know, there's a 6-month waiting list for him or something stupid.
All right. And what's that?
It's basically a preamp processor.
Okay.
You know. It's fantastic, to be fair. And the guitarist got hold of it purely by luck. Some guy won it in a competition on Total Guitar. Didn't know how to use it or whatever, and he did a deal with him, swapped him some Black Star stuff and some various pedals. It was like, right, okay. I'm running that into a PV5150 power amp, driving one of those Black Star cabs, and then we're using a PV5150 straight into another Black Star cab and the whole lot.
Oh right, so you got 2 cabs.
Yeah,
like
two
back to back, weren't they?
Yeah, and then just blend, so you get a bit of grunt off. There's a lot of good mid-range off the effects thing.
Yeah,
and then you get a bit more balls off.
So so the cabs should sound pretty much the same, should they?
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how different it sounds from the amp to the other thing. So do that, but it depends.
Presumably that gives it even more bottom end if you've got 4 mics going on.
Yeah. Just gives you the option, to have it. I'd rather have it there and roll it off if it gets in the way of the keyboards or whatever.
So you're recording actually 4 tracks of 4 mics.
Yeah. So it goes down.
You get quite a big session then.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
No wonder your assistant's panicking.
My sessions are mad like that.
Right.
That's
You're not afraid of using a few tracks.
No. There's one song on our album. There's 90 odd tracks of backing vocals. There's 90 pros.
No wonder you need 2 weeks to mix it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you mix them all down and that. You sub mix them in there, type of thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But no, I like to have control over it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not afraid to put it down if it's there, but sometimes it's just nice. That's another beauty of Pro Tools, is the ability to just have that option. You might get a certain, depending on the key of the song or whatever. How some chords can sound brighter. So if you've got a brighter sound on one and it's a bit dirgier the sound, you can push that one up a bit more, to get it to cut through or something like that. I suppose that's one of my tricks I do. Because some people probably don't think that different chords, and they wonder why does that song sound a bit duller, or because of the nature of certain chords, the way they are. And
so depending on the song, you'll mix them differently.
Yeah.
Not different chords within the song though, you don't.
Well, certain parts, yeah.
Right.
That's what I could put. Like the middle 8 comes in and the guitar's dull a bit because they're going down to the E or something. So if you've got a darker sounding amp and then a brighter one, come the middle 8, you can nudge that one, pull that one back, nudge that one up a bit, so you get continuity more.
Yeah. So that's a clever trick.
Yeah, that's one of my ones. And unless you want that contrast, obviously, if you want it suddenly to go, but a lot of the times they don't. If it's like riffing all the way through, you want that constant sound.
Yeah. And what about bass? Do you record an amp and a DI?
Yeah, everything. Straight off the guitar, straight off the DI off the amp.
Right.
Mic the cab up.
So you like to have lots of choices.
Yeah. You should have all the options. I mean, the bass player in this band, he's got his sound pretty much sorted, and he likes it, and it sounds good. So the basic sound's there, DI off the amp, off his preamp. He's got uses a Sans amp,
right,
and it sounds fine. But then I mic'd up the amp peg with an RE20, and that sounded really good as well. So that's what
So have you ever fancied having your own studio and?
Well, I have had. That's what I mean. I've had it.
I mean, since you're.
Oh, since. Yeah. Sometimes you think it'd be nice to have.
Yeah, you miss having the.
Yeah, but then do you really want the hassle of? I've seen these studios go down the pan sort of thing.
Well, you seem to be building a enormous new building here.
Yeah. I mean, Chapel here's always done okay.
They seem to be doing very well, don't they?
Yeah.
Judging from the look of that place.
Yeah, but do
you own any gear, any mics and things? Yeah. Have you got a stash of things? That you take with you?
I've still got a bit of a PA.
Have you?
I've got in my house.
Right.
Yeah. Which I rent out occasionally. I've got a guy who'll take it out, or it's only a small thing. But I've got some mics, and it's got some Rev 7s and SPX 90s. And
I mean, do you bring a car full of stuff here when you come here?
No.
Because they don't need to. No, right.
Don't need to. I might bring just drum clips and things like that, because I hate stands.
Oh, right.
hate mic stands.
Oh, so you clip onto the tom-toms?
It's so much better, I think.
Really?
Yeah, they don't move and think, I mean, the times I've been in the studio, got some idiot drunk or something who's just wandering across, trod over the overhead stand, which then knocks the floor tom stand, and it's stuff set and everything like that.
So what mics have you got on tom-toms that can clip on?
Audix.
Audix?
Or 604s, Sennheiser 604s.
So they're quite little mics, aren't they?
Yeah, but
and you can get them far, presumably you want them pretty close anyway, don't you?
Yeah, for the close mic and stuff. The Audix ones are great. I mean, to be fair, I haven't got him on clips here because he's only got like a rack tom and a floor tom.
Yeah.
But I like the Sennheiser 604s. I mean, everybody uses them live anyway, but they sound good in the studio. But I love those Audix mics. I love them on the kick drum as well.
Oh, right.
For rock, because they've got that scoop on them. Better than a 52 in that way, But and also they're small, so you can get them in.
Yeah.
52s and things like that are so bloody big. You get the drummers and they've got the holes that big. At least with the Audix thing, you can get them right in there. Where you need to. I've got and use a bit of the sub. I like the sub things.
Yeah, the sub kick.
Yeah.
Whatever it is,
I remember using homemade things like those way before Yamaha or whoever it thought, we'll make one of those, and a bit of U47 on the outside, just for
FET 47.
Yeah, just for a bit of a bit of that as well.
And do rock and metal singers generally use 58s in the studio?
No, I don't.
What do you use? Posh mics?
Yeah, ice cream mics. 87 414s I like. He's using a black 87 that we've used before. It sounds decent on his voice.
Right.
I like 414s. So I always use a 414 on myself. RE20s.
Right.
I'm surprised how good they can sound.
Yeah, they're quite middly, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you see all the radio stations still use them in America and stuff, but they sound good for they can sound good for vocals. Depends. I mean, yourself that you can put up Neumanns and they'll all sound bloody different, won't they? C12s or whatever, they'll all sound different. I'll give it a go. A new singer, if I've not worked with them before, 3 or 4 mics up. Yeah, let's have a listen. And but no, I don't like using 58s. A couple of bands I've worked with, they do, because they've had to be in the control room. They want to hold it and do it. But that's usually out and out heavy metal stuff. So it's not critical of breaths and nice, nice tones.
No. Do you ever get into tuning vocals and all that stuff with the auto tune and you fiddle about with?
I will do if needs be.
Yeah.
And that is, I can't help it, because the vocals is so important.
Yeah.
I try not to, I'd rather get the performance. I mean, like in this situation, we'll do 8 or 9 takes of the verses, whatever, and then comp the best. And to be fair, we did one song last night, and I think we tuned like 2 words.
Right.
And it was just a little fraction of a bit, So
and is that something you do? You steam in and
I'll do it.
And you use auto tune?
Yeah.
In graphical mode?
Yeah.
Right.
And draw it.
You can draw the notes.
We just see how that's slightly sharp. That's what it was last night.
Yeah.
Just slightly sharp and wobbly. Couldn't quite nail it. Just drew it in on the note, and there you go. But it was just 2, like I said, 2 words really.
Yeah.
So I don't like it when some yourself. So many singers sound great now, and then you see them live and they're absolutely horrendous. And because they, poor people can be a lot better than they actually are.
Yeah.
They don't rehearse so much and stuff. And it's like you get them and it's like, oh God above, Backing vocals I'll tend to use auto tune as well, so that you can make a hell of a difference. At the back, like BV's loose backing vocals can sound so shit sometimes. Yeah. And then if they're there and they're tuned and that, it's like whoa, it's gives it that professionalism, I suppose. It's a hard one. Sometimes you look at it and you think, oh God, but at the same time you think, oh, what a godsend. Yeah.
Well, it's hard getting guitars in tune as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, every pass, tune.
Yeah. That seems to be the main job of the producer these days, isn't it?
Yeah, you're bending.
Have you checked your tuning?
Yeah, we just have to go back in a minute and carry on, but
I'll let you go in a sec. Yeah.
Yeah, we like I'm looking at him, I'm just seeing him bending the strings down. It's like, you know, just push straight on, you know. And it's like wondering why, and especially playing open chords, single chords are the hardest thing. And you invariably you will have to do one at a time. You know, I'm not saying like Mutt Lang, you know, string at a time, but you know, there's an intro on this song where it's like bow, 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 4 chords, I think it is, you know, but
Retune for each.
yeah, punching, and then just, you know, because it's so exposed, and everybody's ears are attuned to, you know, the threshold of your average punter from a quality point of view, not from an audio point of view. I'll hasten to add hi-fi, because obviously MP3s and dreadful things like that, you know, the way people are encouraged to listen to music these days, it's a sad state of affairs, but that's marketing for you, you know. But actual, you know, performance and tuning and stuff like that, it's all pretty perfect, isn't it? You know, and you can do it. That's the thing. Yeah. There's no excuse anymore. You know, oh well, that's how it was, and it's on tape, and.
Well, there's Melodyne now, we can retune the individual strings in.
God, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy what there is.
Yeah. Well, I think we better wrap it up there. Let you get back to work.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking the time out.
No worries.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, and you, sir.